Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about The Getaway King. The Getaway King is a Polish crime comedy based on the true story of Zdzisław Namrocki, one of Poland's most notorious thieves who escaped prison and officers of the law 29 times. The movie explores his exploits in the twilight years of communist-era Poland, determined to stick it against the system and live life on his own terms. Things start to change when he begins spending time with a woman in his neighborhood who eventually becomes his girlfriend, as she motivates him to try and turn over a new leaf of sorts. Despite him changing his course, Namro still has to stay ahead of the law, who are seeking to bring him to justice for his crimes. Although this movie came out on Netflix recently, I found out it had already been released in Poland for quite some time, so my opinion may be a bit late. Regardless, I found this to be an entertaining movie. It has some problems with its story and pacing, but it succeeds in telling yet another one of many compelling Polish true crime stories with a comedic twist. Namro, as he's commonly referred to, is the star of the show, and he sure acts like it. He is easily the best part of the movie, as he effortlessly wears confidence almost like it's a uniform, which is fitting considering how many times he's been able to outwit the law. This makes following along with his acts of thievery that much more enjoyable, and despite being a criminal, he never acts like a heartless thug, as he demonstrates compassion a small handful of times to save people when they are in need, even toward people who try to catch him. Throw in the obligatory smile he wears in just about every scene, and it's hard not to like the guy. His girlfriend Tereska was a great character to pair up with Namro. She has a sense of sarcasm that's immediately endearing, and that she can basically see through his BS, but does so in a playful manner. Their relationship starts off fairly casual and gradually grows into something more later on, which feels more natural and realistic in its approach. Namro doesn't operate alone in his crimes. He routinely teams up with 3 other accomplices who engage in various scenarios from thefts to scams and everything else in between. As supporting characters in the crime sequences, they do play their role, but as characters by themselves, they're pretty bland. It doesn't matter all that much, as Namro and Tereska are easily able to hold their own, but it's still kind of disappointing with how average they turned out to be. There is an interesting angle explored with one member named Antos later on, and it does a decent enough job at showing Namro's value of camaraderie, but it's not explored to its full potential. I will say that the cops in the movie did make up for the thieves, especially with the head cop Barsky. His on-screen relationship dynamic with Namro and the way he's able to put pieces together faster than everyone else about his whereabouts was pretty amusing. One of the first things that became evident to me upon watching this movie was the sheer style of it all. Just about every scene has a rich color scheme consisting of deep reds and yellows that enhances the retro vibe of its setting, which combined with its already faithful depiction of communist-era Poland in terms of production design and costume, made for an immersive experience. Sometimes the colors are so rich that it can actually work against the movie's favor. There were a few times where I couldn't make out everything that was happening on screen and had to turn down the contrast and backlight on my TV a bit in order to get a good picture. Thankfully, this doesn't happen too often, but it does get distracting at times. The stylistic presentation extends well beyond the color scheme. The movie makes creative use of panning shots to show characters doing something as simple as walking or driving a car, usually along with some cool editing transitions that were really trippy and added to the excitement of the story during the thrill sequences. And these thrill sequences were a ton of fun when they did happen. There's a variety of chases and heists that are enjoyable to watch, but it's Namro's escapes from the law that take the cake. It's always made out that he has an ace up his sleeve that nobody knows about, and the unpredictable nature of these escapes kept me on the edge of my seat to see what he'd do to come out on top. But you may have noticed that I said when they did happen. That's because for most of this movie's story, there's not a lot of exciting things taking place. There's lots of characters planning, talking, and walking from one place to another, and over time, it starts to drag the pacing into the gutter. On a similar note, this also leaves the story a bit unfocused. I never got a sense of any sort of major goal any of the characters were trying to achieve beyond committing acts of thievery. The actions they commit are fun to watch, but the stretches of slowness in between do become wearisome. This being said, I found myself intrigued enough with its setting to not be all that bothered by it. I've seen plenty of Polish films on Netflix set in the communist era, and it's an aesthetic that I never get tired of seeing, especially with how unique this one's depiction is. Unlike other films, which usually focused on a dark, depressing atmosphere, this one goes back and forth between this and then cuts to flashy, upbeat parties, bars, and all other manner of social settings. This shows how different Namro's world is from everyone else's, even on a mental level, as he's always indulging in his wealth and confidence. The soundtrack? What can I say? It's fantastic. fantastic. And looking back on it now, it might actually be my favorite thing about the movie aside from Namro himself. Hearing jazz playing in the background made it easy to get sucked into this movie's world, even when nothing notable was happening. The movie even manages to be quite funny at times where I didn't expect it to be. One of my favorite running gags was when a mob of people are running on scene, and then the movie cuts to slow-mo and singles out one subject who usually does something silly like tripping over themselves trying to catch Namro. It's a bit of a cheap laugh, but I didn't mind considering how upbeat the rest of the movie is. There's a lot of similar and even copied elements between this movie and other Polish crime flicks like Operation Hyacinth and How I Fell in Love with a Gangster, but this movie is able to stand out from those two just from its sheer attention to detail on a technical level alone. Seeing this amount of effort put into the aesthetics made it worth watching, even if it doesn't always pay off. Overall, The Getaway King is a nice change of pace from the usual dramatic depiction of communist-era Poland, and is an interesting look at one of Poland's more notorious criminals. If you like crime movies that are based on true stories and you want to watch one that has a lighter tone behind it, I definitely recommend that you check this one out. Most of its supporting characters aren't the best, and the movie does suffer from slow pacing at times, but the awesome main character it's based on, the stylish presentation, and the entertainment value of its thrill sequences add up to a feature that makes for a fun and fitting tribute to Namro. What did you think about this movie? Did you enjoy the overall creativity behind it, or did you also find its story to be a bit slow at times? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's gonna wrap up my review of The Getaway King. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the British war drama, Operation Mincemeat. Bye bye!